gentlemen, we appreciate you having you. I'm sure you've heard it every room that you walked into, but you know, obviously our state chairman, the big judge, and Steve and Rachel, they put a lot into this to make this happen. It's a really wonderful event, so you guys showing up and participating and respecting it and what they do really means a lot to ourselves, and so we thank you for that. My name is Jack Sullivan. Those that don't know me, and I'm a Mr. Olympia judge, Arnold International head judge, IPB Pro League judge. I've been a competitor for a long time. You know, made it pretty far in the national ranks. Never earned my pro card, but got decently close to say I was a bodybuilder for a little bit. So my right here is a legend amongst us, and I mean that quite literally, Mr. Tim Gardner.
Hi guys. I spent 10 straight years of competitive bodybuilding at NPC. Built on my name as an athlete. Became a judge, state judge. Went to national level as well, judging, and that catapulted me into being a pro judge. Pro judge took me into the Olympia panel for 8 years, and then I was promoted to be the Olympia Expo director. Judged Arnold for 7 times, and just intertwined in the whole NPC IPB Pro League concept as being the chairman in Florida and Puerto Rico, and it really it segued in from being able to retire from my corporate world career to strictly health and fitness. So I just been very blessed to travel the world because of the Manians and the IPB and the NPC.
Rocker.
My name is Rocky Rowland. I'm a IFBB pro and NPC judge. Been bodybuilding for about 15 years. Come through the ranks, been competing, you know, for 15 years, powerlifting for 8 years. I do a lot of things like for motivation and encouragement, just get athletes out to learn, you know, the training principles and posing and diet and nutrition. And like I said, these guys here, man, I don't. This today is the first time meeting them, but you know, listening to them speak and all, you know, we all have a passion, just like you guys do. That's why you're here, and I'm sure any of these guys are here to help you guys reach your goals.
IFBB Pro, Danny Ricketts. I've been competing, 10 years now, going on 11 years. Turned pro back in 2013, won nationals back in 2013. I've been to, won like 3 pro shows so far, been to Olympia twice already. So I'm just, I love this sport. It's always, I'm always out and I'm always in. It's like, I'm out, but it always, you know, it brings me back in. I absolutely have a passion for this sport, and I've done pretty well, you know, in this sport when it comes to like the competition. So, so I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad you guys be able to get this opportunity to speak to you guys.
I'm Bart Tompkins. I'm an IPB Pro, turned pro at 22 Nationals, and then I'll be doing pro debut here soon. And that's all I got.
Right on. So how many of you guys are first-time competitors, novice athletes? Tell us, what do you got going on? Is this going to be your first season?
What's that?
This is going to be your first time competing this coming year?
First time, yeah.
Awesome. What show are you doing?
The Southern Muscle Showdown, Dalton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on, man.
Yeah.
There you go.
Locked in.
Awesome. How many weeks out are you?
Yeah. What's that?
When is the show? How many weeks?
I'm sorry, a little hard here.
How many weeks? When is the
Oh,
show?
man, it's in October 1st, I think, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
That's how you
very
do
good.
it, sure thing, so.
How about the rest of you guys? What's your competitive career like? How long have you guys been competing?
I've been competing for about 3 years. When I turned 60, I'm 63 now, and I'm going to head to Pittsburgh in July and try to get a pro card.
There you go. Mr. Nats.
I've had people 30, probably 10. But I've been like 26, I'm 52. So I've done NPC from Michigan, so I did that, and I moved out here, I did SMBF. And then after that, I did that for maybe 6 years, and then I stopped, and I might not have to stop for like 8 years, and came back to the NBC last year and won my pro card in August.
Wow, that's awesome.
Congratulations.
So my first competition was in 2019, and then my most recent one was in 2023. So I put bodybuilding down for a little bit, picked up powerlifting, and this year, I'm gonna end up looking at getting back into bodybuilding.
There you go. Until you got some wheels underneath those sweatpants, man. How about you, sir?
Well,
Novice, first time?
no, I'm 63. Believe it or not, my first show was December '85, so this December will actually be 40 years ago.
Way cool. That's awesome, man. Round of applause for you.
I like doing it, I like camaraderie, like to try and get better, and
Yeah.
even after all those years, my clothes I can still use.
Yeah, that's the truth for everybody.
Are you from Atlanta area?
Grew up down in Florida, West Palm,
West Palm?
and I've been here since '89, so I've been here a
Okay.
long time.
I'll retire. I'm
What
just.
you got back there, young man?
Former Mr. Florida right there, Richard Bartley.
Big Rich in the house.
Well, competing about 4 years. I started when I retired from the Army about age 40, so
Nice.
about 44 now. I've been doing it for about 4 years. So.
Awesome. You getting on stage this year?
I actually, 12 days will be in the Army.
Oh, right on. Okay.
There, so.
Nice, man. What are you competing in?
Classic.
Classic? Nice, man. Awesome. Okay, we'll see you there.
Best of luck to you.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, I did my first show in 2023 at Kevin DeHaven's Mid-Atlantic. I'll be competing in the Knox Classic this in August.
Nice. Awesome.
Been competing for 4 years, won a pro card at another national organization, and took the last year off to try to put on enough size to compete NPC. So be competing sometime later on this year when coach says we put on enough size to compete.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you switching over and coming to the league.
Absolutely.
I'm Scott Whitney, came here from Alabama. I've competed now about the last 3.5 years. I'm 63, and but also competed as a teenager back before the NPC. And so I won several contests. I won the Mr. Oregon, Mr. Portland, and teenage contests. And then I took about 35 years with my family just to work and set a base for kind of like your story a little bit. Found myself just enjoying the other parts of my life, so I wasn't lifting or any of that. But 3.5 years ago I started. I got a contest coming in July. It's the Universe contest in New Jersey.
New Jersey, yeah. Big Steve's.
So that's tried to condense it.
So you've done a good job. Well, that's exciting. It's awesome that you're getting back to it. And Masters is a great show. Team U is a great show to jump into for sure.
Well, and my wife, actually, she took this up a few years ago, and so I've been kind of following her lead, so she's here today too.
Awesome.
So
Is
we
she
work out.
competing as well?
Yes, she's been helping me, like coaching me.
You're a brave man.
Wise man.
That too. That too. Depends on the day, I guess, right?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, good for you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for all of you being here.
No, I appreciate that. It's our honor.
First time competing, 9 weeks out, Charlotte Cup, NPC, so, and
Awesome.
bodybuilding. So,
Yeah, your picks look good, man. You're definitely on track.
thank you.
Yeah, for
Sure,
sure.
look forward to it. It's a whole different world.
Yeah.
I've always just lifted for fun, and I guess I'll take that next step of challenging myself. I've never gotten to peak week, like stage ready, dried out.
Right.
I don't know what that's like, but I want to know what that's like.
Yeah. It's an awesome experience, and it's really a surreal thing to go through the process, especially your first contest prep, and see firsthand, the control and how you can manipulate the body, and really what the body's capable of doing. And I said it before in some of the other breakouts thing. I mean, there's certainly a level of masochism to it. Getting your body down to that level of body fat is a quote unquote enjoyable process to the right person, but being able to do that is a really, really cool thing, and being able to own that is really extraordinary, and again, having the drive and the discipline and the temperament to be able to do that, manage everything else in your life, takes a really extraordinary person to be able to do that. So, we've all done it up here, and we give you guys a lot of credit for doing it and getting into it. And, our goal here is to help you and just inform you as much as we can, and put you in a better position to be successful at it, enjoy it, and get out of it what you really want. So we want to make this as interactive as we possibly can. If you guys have questions along the way, don't hesitate to ask anything. You got a wealth of knowledge up here, so we want to make sure that we can share that with you. But the first thing that we'll start with is really what are the judges looking for? And bodybuilding has certainly changed. The industry has changed, and that's thanks to Tyler Mannion. Before Tyler came on, we kind of went down this path of the biggest and hardest was going to win. And there was certainly a time and a place for that, and that certainly had its successes without a doubt. But it also, brought physiques that didn't have that look that we were going for, and I think that people are going for. I think in today's society, and you guys can speak to this if you want, but nowadays you're seeing guys that want to look like Samson Dowda and not a Ronnie Coleman per se, and Ronnie's the man. All right, he's the man. But that more streamlined, tapered, aesthetically pleasing look with the mass is definitely the way that the industry is going now, and that's something that Tyler has been really focused on. And that was one of the things that was on the forefront when he really got into this was, kind of pivoting a little bit from that kind of direction, and not just from the Olympia stage, but on down to the NPC stage as well. And so we've definitely seen a big change in that. And that's something that bodybuilders definitely have to be mindful of 100% is developing a streamlined aesthetic, balanced physique, front to back, top to bottom, and also controlling and owning your posing, because that's huge in how you present yourself. So to me, that's been one of the biggest shifts is just that overall look. And we're not just going for the biggest and hardest, but there's an aesthetic factor to that that we're really, really, really mindful of. And it's interesting, and I know Tim can agree with this, that we still see some of these old school guys and some of the old school fans who are quote unquote purists, and we love that, that still want to go for that, the bigger and the harder. And that's not what it is, and quite honestly, I don't think that's what it was ever meant to be. But it did go that way, and now we've kind of transitioned back, which is really good. So I don't know what you have to add to that, but I know you're a big advocate of that.
Yeah, and when I think about bodybuilding, if you could just apply the classic criteria, but without a weight limit, maximize around it, the tapering, as Jack alluded to, the more aesthetic. So how can you be more aesthetic? It's really starts from the waist, and how everything ties in and the detail. But and it becomes poetry in motion, especially when you apply the posing. You see so many that just total disregard to posing routine. I believe only Robbie Robinson stepped on stage and hit one pose and walked off, but he still won the title. It shows that you prepared, completely prepared and put together a routine that's not only going to show you at your best from all angles, but also be entertaining to that first timer in the audience that goes, wow, that was poetry in motion. And they did it with their physique without even speaking or singing or anything. They did it just in their emotions. So we're starting to see now, and I attribute this to bringing classic, that division, that all the other categories, especially with bodybuilding, they're putting more emphasis in that routine and that presentation. And we say that there's not really a score on that, but the caveat is if it's heads up, like we got to flip a coin. Who do you think the judge is going to give that first place to? That higher placing, the one that did that preparation and did that choreographed routine that tells a story. So it's a lost art that's coming back.
Yeah. And it's just, that extra criteria, obviously muscularity is number one. You have to have a complete physique, front to back, head to toe. And that's always going to be the differentiator for most shows, whether you're a master's athlete, you're in the NPC, or if you're in the pro league. You can have the absolute best physique from the front. You could have a full round chest, deep ab separation, and wide quads, great separation. The calves from the front that match, and the round arms and shoulders, but if you turn around from behind and, you're lacking glute depth, but you have an incredible back, or you don't have, the hamstring depth on the side chest, and and you are lacking that one body part, that is always going to be the issue that separates you from winning that class or getting the position that you want. And so when you talk about bodybuilding, you know, I mean, going back to pumping iron, when Arnold talks about developing that physique, that's what it is. And I think, you know, when you guys are stepping back and creating your training programs and looking at yourselves, you have to be completely objective. And I think we all do this, at least at a young age. I know I did it. But, you know, guy in the other room was complimenting me on my legs. Well, I always took very naturally to legs. When I started training legs, I could feel it, I liked it, I enjoyed the pain of it. And so I was training legs 2-3 days a week. You know, I don't want those leg shows. My back, on the other hand, did not grow that way. And it wasn't until I started losing shows, and they're like, yeah, you're losing from behind. Well, I had spent, you know, the first half of my bodybuilding career focusing on my legs, focusing on my arms, you know, those types of things, not really focusing on my weaker body parts. And even now, 42 years old, to go back, look at my career, I mean, I can probably count on one hand the amount of times that I really, truly fucking deadlifted the way that I needed to. And that's what separated me from winning my pro card. I mean, this same guy beat me 2 years in a row from behind because his back was just better than mine. You know, so that's something that you have to be very, very aware of and very objective about. You know, when you're getting that feedback from the judges, where you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you're looking at your own photos, you know, be real with yourself. What is your weakest body part? And if you're not building your training program around that, you're always going to be in a weaker position against a guy who maybe isn't as conditioned as you, but is a complete bodybuilder. You know, so if you don't have that complete physique, you're always going to have a weak link, you know, in your presentation that is always going to be holding you back. And as judges, whether NPC judges, as judges, NPC judges, pro judges, whatever it is, you know, you develop a brand. We know who you are, especially if we see you, especially if you are getting ready doing pro qualifiers and we see you year in and year out. If you're doing USAs and we're going to see you at North Americans, we know you're coming to nationals at the end of the year. We know that, you know, you have a narrow back, or we know that, you know, you don't have quad sweep, or you're lacking biceps, whatever it is. Like, we know that's what you're bringing to the show. That's not going to change overnight. And we tell you that, hey, this is the issue, this is why you're losing, and you're not, you know, putting enough emphasis on that in your off season. It's going to continue to cripple you. And typically, you know, when we see guys that have a weaker body part, I hate to say it, but it becomes like a part of their brand. It's kind of always an ongoing thing. So, you know, getting into bodybuilding, no matter where you're at in that journey, like, take a step back, look at your training program, look at your training split. Is it really focusing on your weaker body parts? And look, my man, you got crazy legs. You know, if you're hitting legs twice a day, you know, you might be doing yourself a disservice. You know what I mean? Because it's not just a leg competition. You know, it's a complete physique competition. So muscularity is everything, and it's not just again about size. It's about that complete development, having that overall package, and then obviously building things up in balance and in proportion, and making sure everything is streamlined and clean. And going back to the aesthetic side of things, but you know, there was a time and a place where it was about being the biggest and hardest, and with that also grew the biggest stomachs. Because, you know, God bless them, and I'm not going to name names, but these guys were lifting astronomical amounts of weights, deadlifting and squatting and all these different things, and at the same time, growing out their midsection, growing out their torso. And we would see it year after year. You can go back and look at the pictures and see it, you know, and they may have had a back wider than this wall, and they had a chest thicker than you can imagine, but their stomach was also just as wide, just as thick. And when they hit a side chest, or they went and did a quarter turn, it was not very pleasing looking. And so it's finding a way to train and grow yourself and add that depth and add that thickness without blowing this out at the same time. And that's a different style of training now. That's more nuanced than it was back then. Back then it was, hey, you know, put 400, 500, 600 pounds on the bar and see how many times I can squat this damn thing. Where, you know, you started to see that change. You know, especially I think with like a Jay Cutler, not that he had the smallest waist, but he had really good waist control, but he was always like, hey, once I got to a certain size, I was sticking with 315, 405 on the Smith machine, doing sets of, you know, 12, 15, 20 drop sets, getting that volume in and things like that. He wasn't chasing 400, 500, 600, 700 pounds on the squat because he didn't need to. And so, you know, it's a mental shift at the same time, and being able to be aware of where you're at in your physique and your development and your training, so that it all coincide and it's all going in the same direction, right? So the muscularity and, you know, a complete, balanced, developed physique is really, really important with that. Yeah.
For someone like my age, how important is it that amount of weight that you're talking about, deadlifts and the heavier lifts, squats and all that? I've been using lighter weights just because I haven't wanted to hurt myself. But could I get any benefit by crossing that line and trying to train like a 20-year-old?
Well, I think, you know, that line is subjective for everybody. And I think, you know, I'm sure these guys next to me could probably go into more than I can, but, you know, there's a line there where you have to, in order to activate and engage, you know, all those muscle fibers, that you gotta go heavy enough. That if you're constantly going light and really just doing volume to a certain degree, you're not gonna activate that muscle, and you're not gonna get that engagement, you're not gonna get that growth, or, you know, as you diet down and put your body under more stress, you're cutting calories, you're doing cardio, you know, you could lose some of that muscle. And I was just watching a video from my buddy Ian Bellier. He was saying he would find himself, even in contest prep, where his reps would start to increase a little too much sometimes. And he would have to take a step back and kind of like recalibrate, like, okay, hold on, like, you know, I'm doing sets of 25 right now, like what happened to my workout type of thing. And, you know, so the volume, there's a very, very fine line there. And I used Jay Cutler as an example before. Jay Cutler's a nuanced guy, so don't take that too seriously, but you need to be mindful of that. But you obviously don't want to push to the point where, you know, you're activating or pushing things out of line where your form is becoming an issue, and you can't risk yourself getting injured.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that that makes more.
There's so many variables, you know, your caloric intake, but as Jack said, you want to be safe. And as we get older, you know, in theory, you want to still stimulate with compound movements initially, but then maybe bring in the isolation movements at the latter part of your workout. But always train smart, you know, and safe, and definitely, you know, focus on your form.
Thank you.
Yeah, and pretty much I use the analogy intention and intensity.
Yeah. Yeah, intentionality while you train is super, super important. And, you know, we've all had those days where we get in the gym, we kind of just start going through the motions, even though we might be going heavy. But if you're not dialed into it, you know, activating that muscle fiber, controlling I always talk to people about controlling the transition of your movements from the top down and the bottom up. I mean, those are the most crucial points of that movement. Staying engaged, staying intentional, make sure that you're activating that muscle and staying in control. Because that's typically where you're going to injure yourself.
Right.
You know, but I think something to take home, you know, next time you're in the weight room, you know, increase that weight, make sure you're staying with that same intensity and that same intentionality, and you're executing at that same level. And if you can find yourself that you can put on another 45-pound plate or a 25-pound plate onto that, you know, hack squat leg press. Don't use a 25-pound plate on the leg press. You know, that you need to do that. You know, if you can keep that rep range the same, then if you're not doing that, then you're probably doing yourself a disservice at that point, without a doubt.
Definitely emphasize.
I'm sorry. No, don't sacrifice form and function just to get lifted.
Yeah.
That's not bodybuilding.
Especially as you get older.
Yeah, that's just lifting weights.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to have a really good mind focus. I mean, as I say, I'm a little older than probably most of you, and been lifting for 30 years, and had shoulder surgery actually last year from pushing it too far the year before, just trying to lift super heavy, you know, not enough rest in between, calorie deficit. Ended up in first injury in 30 years, which is pretty good, considering I've lifted heavy my whole life. But now I find myself lifting more time under tension. And I think like these guys were saying, the intensity, man, is the key.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're doing, you know, a rep in good form and you put your 100% intensity into it, and you're still getting 15 or 20 reps, you might need to add weight. And that's what I do. I mean, I try to go to, I hate to that failure point. The failure point is more important than the number point. Too many people get caught up in the numbers and they say, well, I'm going to do 5 sets of 10. Well, could you have did 12 of that way? Probably. Then why are you doing 10? You see what I'm saying? So find that point where you're failing it. Like he said, muscle recruitment is super important, hitting those fast twitch muscle fibers to bring in the larger muscle groups. You know, when you're lifting compound movements is important. Be smart.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question kind of on the diet side of things when it comes to working your weaker muscle groups. And just kind of your opinion on whether it's better to have the the calorie intake pre or post workout? Like say if legs are my issue or back's my issue, where's the best way to strategize those calories?
And again, I say digestibility is one of the most important things. If you can't digest it, you can't metabolize it. You can't use it.
So expand on that.
So digestibility is meaning like, you know, you have no bloating, you fast digesting carbs, white rice, you want to stay away from probably oats pre-workout.
Yeah.
Just because the faster it's in the muscle, the more it can be used for glycogen storage during that workout or recovery after that workout.
And to piggyback what Tim was saying, I've always, and I mean, I was fortunate, I own my own gym, and so I can kind of control my schedule, but I'd always try to have 2-3 meals in and, you know, half a gallon, 2/3 a gallon of water to train, and be able to have another 2-3 meals after that with another half a gallon of water, you know, kind of right in the middle of the day, which isn't always the case for everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think biologically, genetically, everybody's a little bit different. Some people can train fasted, some people can't. You know, I was never able to do that, never felt well with that. But obviously, like he's saying, I certainly wasn't gonna, you know, put down a cup and a half of oatmeal before I walk into the gym either, you know. And I think the further I got into my competitive career and I was working with some top level coaches, I mean, they had, you know, these very, very nuanced protocols, you know, what I was eating in 90 minutes before I worked out, what I was taking a half hour before I worked out, what I was drinking while I worked out, what I was taking and drinking after I worked out, what I ate an hour after I worked out. So there's a lot of science behind it now. That definitely, you know, there's a lot of merit to those different things too, you know. So I think figuring out your body and working with a coach that can really dial in on that, you know, is important. But I think what he was saying too is the digestion piece of it. You know, if you're dealing with indigestion and bloating and things like that, then that's, you know, that's a huge red flag. That's something, whether it's a timing issue, a food issue, serving size issue, is something that you definitely got to look at. What are you doing now?
Usually I do try and do a higher carbs pre and post, like leg day.
Yeah.
And those are kind of the only days I increase my carbs, trying to grow that. But there's just so much information out there, and everybody says different things. So those who've had success, like where's your strategizing of those
Yeah,
nutrients?
I mean, that's the one thing. It's funny, like when I was coming up, and probably you were coming up, Tim, not to date us, but I mean, there was no information. And, you know, so you found the biggest guy in the gym, and what he told you was gold, whether it was fake bullshit or not. I mean, that's what it was. Where now there is so much information that it's misinformation sometimes.
I mean, another thing with digestibility is having fats in. Fats that digest, like coconut oil, MCT oil, macadamia oil.
Yeah, pieces.
Yep.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is having as many controls as you can. You know, pick a process, stick to it for 2 weeks, a month, whatever that might be, quantify what the result is, how you feel.
Trial and error.
Yeah, exactly. But if you have a lot of variables where you're trying every new thing that comes out, you're never going to figure out what's working.
I just wanted to, this is something that I did, my brother suggested it to me, because I was having digestive issues, and I realized I couldn't eat certain foods like broccoli and high amounts of protein. What he suggested to me is that I take the time and blend the food with water and drink it, which I do now because for me, it's already pre-broken down and it doesn't sit in my system as long, and I'm not bloated, and it processes, and I found it that it absorbs into my system a lot faster than me sitting and trying to chew food and waiting for it to break down in my system.
Yeah.
That's what works for me. So I try to utilize that, and I just wanted to kind of add that to it.
I'll give you credit, man. Blended broccoli.
It's just what it is, though.
Right.
Chicken and broccoli and water.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Most people don't know broccoli has a green in it for it's supposed to bloat everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I switched that out to spinach.
Yeah.
I said broccoli irritated my system, so I moved that over to spinach. So now it's just spinach, chicken.
Well, and you bring up another interesting point, is, I mean, there are, you know, quote-unquote healthy foods. There's a limited number of healthy foods, whole foods, that are what we can eat or should be eating, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're all going to agree with you. You know, you can take one individual who's great with white rice and another one that blows the heck out of you. You can take one individual who's great with yams and sweet potatoes, the next one it gives them indigestion and gas like you wouldn't believe, you know. So, again, having those controls in place and being able to objectively say, hey, here's the response of my body to this. I'm pulling this out, even though for every other person this makes sense, it just clearly doesn't for me, you know. Good
And there's
question.
there's an allergy panel you can take too.
Yeah.
You can take an allergy panel and you can kind of tell you what foods work best for you, what food is working against you. And you just base it off, you just gauge it from there.
Now we take it like every 6 months because it changes. You can take
Yeah,
it every
it
3 months,
changes,
you have
yeah.
different foods change every time.
Just do a little allergy panel. You'll see what's working for you, what's not working.
Yeah, a lot of information out there now. Any other questions? So we're getting back to like talking about what the judges are looking for. Obviously, we talked about the muscularity side of it. You know, the other things that fall under that are going to be your structure and conditioning, posing. You know, and structure is kind of the one thing that, you know, you either got or you don't have. And obviously there's, you know, there's kind of there's a sweet science to it. You know, when you look at like a Derek Lungton, for an example, he's got a small waist, he's got wide shoulders, he's got an incredible V-taper, but he's also a little shorter. When you compare him to Samson Dowd, he kind of has the perfect blend of it all, right? He's got the wide shoulders, he's got just a small in his waist, he has an incredible quad sweep, and he's also 5'10", 5'11", you know? And when you look at those top tier guys, you look at him, you look at Martin Fritzwater, you look like a Dallas Hunter, or excuse me, a Hunter Abrada, thank you. You know, they all have that similar structure as far as the wide clavicles, the small waist, you know, the sweeping quads. And that's always going to be a differentiating factor. And I remember when I was competing, my first 2 or 3 shows I ever did as a teenager, I was telling the other group I won the Mr. Teen Pennsylvania. It was Mr. Teen PA, Tim. Thought I was the man.
You were the man.
For 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I went and did another show. Some kid shows up from Pittsburgh. No relation to anybody in Pittsburgh, but kid shows up from Pittsburgh, and his shoulders are this wide. I don't have wide shoulders. I'm Mr. Teen PA. Screw this kid. I lose. Made no sense to me, you know. And my trainer's like, "Hey, here's the reality of this, buddy. You just don't have wide clavicles. Like, you were harder. Quad sweep was probably better." He's like, "The dude had a back for days. This and that. Like, small taper." You know, and that was like my first reality check. Like, okay, like, some of this is out of my control. You know, when I have more narrow clavicles, like, I need to get a lot denser and improve these other body parts to be able to stand next to a guy that has wide clavicles, or I'm not going to win that show. So when you talk about the structure, I mean, it's being aware of that. And when you look at somebody like, you know, Branch Warren, for example, I mean, he wasn't blessed with the best genetic structure, but he clearly put in the work and put on an amount of muscle that made him undeniable. And even though, you know, some of these other guys maybe had wider clavicles and a smaller waist, he made sure that he beat them in every single other factor that he could. He was, without a doubt, the densest, the hardest, the grainiest, roundest, most muscular guy pretty much on any stage. That earned him, what, 2nd place at the Olympia next to Cutler, which, you know, was a pretty dang close call. So when you look at yourselves in the mirrors, or, you know, you're posing, or you're looking at really pictures objectively, you know, it might be, hey, you know what, like, I'm harder than this guy. Well, you know, in muscularity, you guys are pretty balanced, but, you know, as far as the structure goes, which creates that aesthetic physique, especially now in the era that we're talking about, that's going to be a reality that you just have to digest and understand. And it doesn't mean that, hey, just because, you know, I don't have broad shoulders, I shouldn't compete anymore. But I got to be objective and take ownership of what that looks like and what I need to do to improve my physique to be able to compete next to some of these guys. And if not, then I'm going to continue to lose, and I better just, you know, swallow the pill that that's what this is. But, you know, on the structure side of it, I mean, it's kind of cut and dry as far as that goes. You know, wide clavicles, small waist. You know, if you're someone who's coming in at that Chris Bumstead, Samson height, you know, you have a leg up because your eyes are going to be drawn to that. You know, it usually allows for prettier lines at the same time. You guys have anything to add?
Yeah, since we're talking kind of about posing, let me tell you guys a very important word that you need to remember. Practice. Because if you don't put in the work, these judges are going to see it.
Yeah.
You can't wait a week out to start your posing. Then we will know. Because when you get up on that stage, you can tell who did their posing and who didn't. And I mean, honestly, you guys should be starting out at least 6 to 8 weeks minimum. And start practice your posing. Your posing should be a workout itself. If you're not spending an hour a day posing, then you're not doing it right. I'm sorry, you're not. And what you don't realize is there's a lot of benefit to posing, not only just getting to practice, but learning the techniques, the transitions. When you look at this, when you go from pose to pose, the transitions are important. You just can't get up there and like a sloppy cow. You can't. You gotta be smooth, you gotta hit your transitions, and you gotta be able to hold it. If you can't hold your pose for 3 to 5 seconds, then you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very important. I'm sure you guys can expound on that.
It was a warm-up show for me to jump in and get real practice with pose and adrenaline. And I started 20 weeks out, and I got to the point where I was doing 2 hours a day.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, tying that into, the genetic and the structure side of things, that's the one thing and the only thing that you can do to show yourself in the best light. There are certain poses, there's certain angles, there's certain, shoulder rotation, elbow position, hip position, that can show you in the best light possible. So if you're somebody that doesn't have necessarily wide clavicles, there's a lot you can do on your side chest to show yourself wider through the chest and through the shoulders, so you can stand next to somebody who has that wider chest, that wider shoulder clavicle issue. Same thing from behind. If you're somebody that doesn't have that wide quad sweep or the, real, wide legs, there's a lot you can do with your hips. There's a lot you can do with your foot position to make yourself wider. And to what Rocco was saying, and we talked about this earlier, you have to start earlier. I mean, for you guys that have competed before, obviously, you know that the longer you compete, the more tired you get. It's just the reality of it, right? I mean, you're lucky to hold on to that damn treadmill for 45 minutes an hour some days. And so you do that, then you go through your own training session, you get your meals, and you deal with work, and then you got to pose. If you're not starting that 20 weeks out, quite honestly, I tell athletes you should be doing it year-round. Maybe not aggressively year-round, but going through the paces year-round, the footwork, the motion, the transition. Not that you got to squeeze the hell out of it, but just going through the fluidity of it and having everything down, so that as you're building to it, you don't have to spend an hour doing it because you have it down already. You have that base layer of the footwork, of the body position, and then you start adding to it a little bit, and then it becomes just second nature. I mean, I haven't posed in the longest time, and I know I can get up there and go through it effortlessly. Could I hold them very long? Probably not. But that's very, very important, because if you wait to do it till halfway through your prep or the last quarter of your prep, it's going to show on stage. And, when we talk about how the sport has pivoted a little bit, I think before, athletes wouldn't get the same time on stage as they do now. I think anyone that's been judged by me knows that I over-compare, maybe almost to a fault sometimes. Don't tell Tyler that. But I mean, I will pose the hell out of you. And I tell everybody, and I've been to multiple of Tim's shows and his meetings, I tell them, be ready to work. Like, you're all going to get looked, you're all going to get compared, you're going to get over-compared. And if you're not conditioned for it, I tell them, like, don't come dehydrated, because you are going to flatten out on stage, because I am going to pose you. And if you are not ready for that, you're going to be in a bad spot. And so, yeah, posing is critical. One, you can show yourself in the best light possible. And two, it's a way to kind of take advantage of your own physique and really get ahead. And, we talked about this in one of the earlier breakouts, that we see guys who maybe aren't as muscular or maybe aren't as conditioned, but they come in and they can pose literally like a professional. They show themselves in such a strong light because they come out posing like a professional, that they're going to sometimes get that nod over the guy who maybe has a little bit more muscle to him, or maybe is a little bit more conditioned, but can't hit a back double bicep or hit a front lat spread to save his life. Well, it's like all of a sudden you can't hit 3 of the 7 poses we need you to hit. You may be bigger and harder than this guy next to you, but this guy is smoking you in all these poses because he can roll his shoulders forward, get his back out nice and wide. He's controlling his stomach through his transitions. He's getting his back out on that back double bicep, whatever those things are. So posing is critical, and that's something that we implore people to do year-round. Again, even at a minimal effort, but just going through the paces, getting your body in position, be used to how to handle that. And then, like you said, as the show gets closer and closer, you're going to be conditioned and ready for it, and not be behind the 8 ball with that. So posing is really, really important.
I make posing a part of my training. So what I'll do is I'll pose like after like a back day, like a really heavy back day, or really heavy leg day. I do posing after I train. So I do right after I train for another hour. So I feel like with that, if I could hold my poses after training so hard and already fatigued, stage is easy. Stage is easy. So you just have to. That's been working for me. I pose after I train, and that way I'm posing while I'm already fatigued, and that way on stage, I hold my poses.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and I mean, I'll tell you what, he's tougher than me, because I would do it before I train.
Nah, don't do it before you train. After you train, use that fatigue.
Yeah.
Use that fatigue as my advantage.
Right, because he's right, because that mimics the stage, because a lot of the times, you know,
Adrenaline.
adrenaline, you're depleted to
Yep.
some degree, you know, you don't have the amount of carbs that you're in, you don't have the amount of glycogen and water in you that you normally would on a training day, so by the time you deplete that all the
Yep.
way, that's gonna really put you in the same position as you
Yep.
are on stage.
When you're on
That's a really
stage,
good idea.
it's like easy. Go and pose all day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll see it, man, I mean,
Yep.
the Chicago Pro, just this year, we were taking these guys through the paces, and I mean, you know, they're up there huffing and puffing, some of them, it's like, hey, you guys ready? We're going another round, you know? And you can clearly see the ones that are ready and the ones that want it.
I'm always like, bring it on. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like,
And I'll tell you what, I mean, it's the athlete with that mentality that is ready, that usually does better. And the one that's up there huffing and puffing is the one that's fading, the one that's flattening out, and all of a sudden their skin is getting thicker, you're seeing that water come out the lower back, they start sweating and everything else. I mean, that's that guy either made a mistake in what he did the last 48 hours, or he just really wasn't to really pose the way that he needed to be. So, and there's a lot of really good posing coaches out there. And there's a lot of seminars out there, there's a lot of information out there. You know, there's controls that you have competing, and one of them is your conditioning, and the other one is your presentation. And so to not be good at posing is just a lack of effort and a lack of planning, because there's awesome pros, there's people on this panel who can help you and do a very high level job of that. And to not make sure that you check that box is just, to me, it is unacceptable, because you're, you know, the time, the money, the effort, the energy you're putting into getting on stage, and you can't hit a back fucking, excuse me, back lat spread. Yeah, you can't hit a back lat spread, man, that's, you know, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball, especially if you're somebody that could have a great back lat spread, then it's like, man, and we do it all the time. You know, I think of Bill Sibilia and I all the time, where, you know, we'll have a guy, we'll turn around at a back double bicep, back lat spread, and, you know, you see their, you know, they're getting caught up, and their rotator cuff isn't rolling forward, they can't get their scapula out, we'll pull them around, and we're like, all right, man, I mean, literally, we're like, all right, we'll give this guy one more chance. Turn him back around, we'll give them the same 2 shots, they can't get it out, all right, buddy, you're in second place. They come back out stage, what happened? I look better, I'm like, yeah, man, you couldn't hit 2 of the 7 poses, buddy. You know, you lost. It was close on this, maybe you beat him on this, he beat you on that, but your right shoulder was stuck. It's just that simple. So hey, you look great on Instagram, enjoy that, but that don't matter. You know, so it's really, really, really critical. Any questions on posing, guys?
Yeah, I got a question. So foot position on back lat spread, ab and thigh, and front lat spread. I've seen a variation of it. Sometimes you have people who pose with both legs down, or sometimes they kick the leg to the side, front and back, or they kick it to the back, or they kick it to the side. Which one is it?
I think generally speaking, you know, you want to see on the back lat spread or back double bicep, you know, you want your feet to be a little bit wider, maybe it's just in line with your shoulders.
Slightly back, but not too far.
Yeah, you start going too wide, you start creating what's called negative space between your legs. Legs start looking stringy. Not a good look. And then it just looks imbalanced from the top to the bottom. And you always want to have 1 foot back, you know, maybe 6 inches, something like that, getting up on your calf, squeezing your hamstring, squeezing your glute. We've seen this new thing in the last few years where people want to push their glutes back instead of tucking their glutes underneath them, squeezing their glutes. Judges don't really enjoy that. You know, pull your hips underneath you, squeeze your glutes, squeeze your hamstring, activate all that. We want to see that separation. But you know, when you see guys whose legs are very separated, or you see one leg is like, you know, 2 to 3 feet behind the other one, like they're in a runner's position or something like that, that's not what the pose is. Not at all. And
Slightly out, back.
yeah.
Not all the way, like you said, way back. No, I go slightly out.
Like this here, right?
Yeah.
Just about that. So that your ball of your foot's almost in line with your heel, my knees are pointed out, showing your quad sweep, pulling your hips underneath you, squeezing both your glutes, your hamstrings.
I roll my heels in, that back leg, I roll the heels in a little bit up so the hamstring pops out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me. So sometimes you just gotta see what works for your physique, what your physique looks best in. But that's where practice comes, taking pictures, taking videos of yourself, and critiquing it and say, okay, my physique look better. This, you know what I'm saying? This, So,
And everyone's a little bit different, to
Yes.
piggyback off what he said, and the leaner that you get, it may show a little bit different, but the base and foundation of that really shouldn't be very far off. When he's talking about a more nuanced type of move, where he rolls his ankle in a little bit, you may not need to do
You may
that.
not need to do that, yes. I see some competitors do the things, like, that compete against me, they don't do what I do, because that's what, you know what I'm saying, that's what they don't need to. For me, I kind of need to a little bit, so, yeah, just gotta tweak it. But the basics is still the basics.
Yeah.
Yeah, but unless, if you don't get in front of that mirror and practice these poses,
Yeah.
and display what best fits your physique, you're not gonna learn, you won't learn how to rotate, or like when you post a calf back on a rear pose, sometimes turning the knee out, shows more the hamstring, and everything's engaging, from floor to ceiling,
Yeah, you pose it from the ground.
But you've gotta practice and look in the mirror. So if you're by yourself, close your eyes, stay in pose, open your eyes, that's what the judges are gonna see. But now, we've got, you can videos yourself, your training partner. What Damien said about hitting your poses after your workout, that was part of my daily regime. If I did whatever body part I did, after I was done, I'd get in front of the mirror and I'd pose that body part. So, and then holding the poses longer without shaking. You're not showing any more muscle shaking. But make sure you have the right angles. Or just the turn, the rotation of your hand. Supinate in to bring out the peak more, or the angle of the elbow. There's just so much. But if you're not in front of the mirror practicing, you'll never see it. Or your training partner or your coach won't see it. But you have to practice and you feel it. But then it becomes second nature. You don't have to look in the mirror anymore. You go, okay, rear double bicep, sure. I'm already posted. Everything's balanced. I'm in proportion. I got it.
And if you haven't spent the time practicing and you don't have the posing condition, you'll never be able to dial in on these nuances. Because you'll be under condition and not be able to control yourself and really be able to find that.
Another thing too, pose without the mirror.
Yes.
Because there's no mirror on
Yeah,
stage.
right.
So you're gonna have a hard time remembering how you look because there's no mirror.
It's gotta be on field.
Exactly. So pose it, hit the pose, and see how you feel. And like that feeling is the exact same feeling you kind of want on stage. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I remember this. This is
It's
how I
muscle
feel.
memory.
Yeah, it just becomes muscle memory. So pose in the mirror for short, and then start posing without a mirror and see how it feels. And then remember that feeling when you're about to get on stage, or when you're on stage, you say, okay, I remember this. Hey, my rear double bicep, my legs are set, cool. My hands are set, my elbows are rotated, boom. This is how it felt when you know what I'm saying? And that way the judges are seeing what you were seeing in the mirror. Yeah.
You asked about the front ab and thigh. I know you want to talk about that. I mean, that's definitely not as cut and dry as like a back double bicep or a back lat spread. Those are kind of more standard. We've definitely seen people go kind of sideways with the variations of it. I don't want to pick on Hunter, but like he's one of them. He's done this kind of like side ab, one thigh type of shot, and that's not what it is. You really have to, in my opinion, and I think most of the judges will agree with this, that you have to have two options with that. I mean, you can stand with both your legs kind of in more of a neutral position if you have a good quad sweep, or you're putting one slightly in front, sitting back on your hips. But we are seeing a lot of guys doing this stuff, and that's not an ab and thigh, So, I mean, you want to try to position your feet and your hips the right way to make your hips and your waist as narrow as you can, and show, the one quad that's more dominant than the other. But I would typically, when I was competing, I would do both. I mean, I would have my right quad up front, and then I would step forward a little bit, and I'd have both my quads kind of in a balanced position. But I was very quad dominant, so it was the shot worked well for me.
But front quad, like, so if you're doing like Sommerfeld kind of does this outward thing with the left leg when he does his stuff, but you want to see front of the quad is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You don't care about the side sweep of that. You want to see.
Well, we want to see the whole quad. You can play with the angles of that.
Yeah.
And obviously, he's shown himself in the best light and everything else. And that's where we talk about the nuances of it, making sure that you're practicing consistently, and you can play with the rotation of your ankle, of your hip to be able to show that. And, typically you're going to be on stage enough where you're going to show that more than once or twice.
Yeah.
So you'll see a lot of those guys like Summerfield who will hit that variation, more than one way.
Yeah, my question is just at like the national level for NPC, what does the judge really want to see though?
So you're gonna be in front of Bill Sibilia, he doesn't wanna see any nonsense, right? He wants to see streamlined, basic posing. And I can just tell you from judging with him a lot, you know, he doesn't wanna see the one leg out, you know, a side twist and all that stuff. And for most people, for most national level pro qualifying athletes, that's not gonna do you a lot of good. You know, so I mean, keep it streamlined, classic posing, and that's gonna do better for you. And same thing on like the front double bicep. You know, a lot of these guys think they're Sean Roden, God rest his soul. You're not. You know, don't try to hit the shot like he does, because it's not gonna look like it does for him, you know. And you're leaning too much, one leg is out too far, it just, you know, that's not what you wanna do. Any other questions yet?
Yeah, talk about like being filled out for like stage presence, and if you're doing poses over and over, you could lose that. So like, what are like tips and tricks backstage and on stage, or even before you even get to the stage, to practice for that?
Well, you know, posing doesn't burn glycogen. It's only going to make you harder on stage. So if you're conditioned, it's only going to bring out, you know, all the positives. You are using calories with, you know, doing the posing, but that's part of your caloric intake on the carbs you bring in to stay full. It's all a timing game.
Yeah.
So being your first show, you're going to, you know, make a lot of notes, document everything with pictures and, you know, before and after.
I think to piggyback what he's saying is, you know, it's more about, at that time, more about water retention than anything, and also posing condition. You know, I mean, if you're somebody that is, you know, overly dehydrated, and you go through a couple rounds of posing, you're gonna flatten out.
Nothing's going to come out.
Yeah, I mean, your muscles are just gonna flatten out because you don't have the sodium, you don't have the water in there, and you're gonna lose that volume. And personally, it's the opposite. And if you're holding too much water, you know, then you're gonna see that guy sweating and flatten out.
Spill over.
So that is the, I mean, really the high level nuance of peaking. And that is the hard part of peaking. And I always use Phil Heath, he won how many Olympias, but how many prejudges do we see him come out and he was a little bit off?
Yeah.
And then he shows up for the finals,
All the adjustments down.
all the adjustments, and he's 100% on, you know. It's tough because, you know, the Olympia is a 2-day pro show. You, my friend, have a prejudging to get this right. And that's the rub, that's how it goes, you know. But you want to make sure, and that's what I was telling, I think it was the novice group, whatever it was, that you don't want to be sucked out and dried out, because number one, you're going to look flat, and that's not going to be a round look that we want to begin with. And by the time you get on stage and go through a few rounds, you know, you're going to flatten out real quick, and it's going to be even more problematic. And that's why we see a lot of athletes, they leave, the stress is over, they go have a regular meal, they get all that sodium in them, and all of a sudden they come back and their muscles are full and their skin is tighter. That sodium's pulling all the water from their skin, their muscles is filled out, and now all of a sudden they look like a whole different person. And it's like, hey, if you'd have figured that out this morning, you'd have a much better response. And that's the hard part. And, you know, being a first-time competitor for you, you know, if you can find a way to duplicate that 2 weeks before, something like that, and figure out what that's like. But when you add on the traveling and the hotel and your first experience backstage, there's so many variables that come into you. There's a lot to manage there. So it's just, and that, you know, to what Tim said, I mean, that just comes with experience. There's no cheat card, there's no, hey, do it this way and this is gonna work. Do it that way, quantify it, and hey, what worked and what didn't is all you can do.
Okay. Right now, you're creating your blueprint. Your first show is your blueprint. So, you know, document everything, follow it to the T, and that way you know you have a reference point to go back to. You might do extremely well, you might win. You're like, all right, cool. Now just improve on what already, you know, if it works, it works, you know, and now you have a little blueprint. So right now you're creating your blueprint and journal your stuff, you know.
For a basis with no experience for backstage getting the pump ready, I know like you do like band work or whatever the case is it like a high rep or is it a long squeeze or like some sort of guidance to understanding getting the pump for stage?
You'll feel it. You actually feel the pump.
Okay, could you do too much?
Sure.
Yeah.
You don't want to spill over.
You're not working out.
Don't
be backstage thinking you're like working out.
So as soon as you feel
You're
pulled
slowly
up
getting
on it.
pumping.
Stay off your legs, just contract, but don't do any more resistance.
Definitely find the expediter backstage. And keep your eye on him so you know when you're going to pump
Go on
up.
stage, yeah.
When you line up, that's probably when I would start pumping up the most you do.
It's like,
I keep it simple. Push-ups, a little bit of band work from the back, a little bit of shoulder, and don't go too crazy. You're not working out backstage. That's how you start.
Yeah.
Pumping up an hour early, it's like, dude, you're gonna flatten out by the time you get on stage. I don't care, because I'm gonna wet, but it's cool.
And the other thing is like, when you go to work out, and you go to the gym, and you can squeeze your quads and see the striations. But then you go hit a bunch of sets, you go to look at your legs, and there's no more
There's no more
striations.
striations, yeah.
Because you pumped all that blood in there. That's not what you want. So you may have a pump, but you've lost all the detail because you pushed all that blood, all that water into the muscle, and that's pushing out to the skin, and you've lost that detail.
That's
So
where
there's,
you go too far.
sometimes less is more.
And some guys I've seen, they could just pose.
Yeah.
And they look better doing that.
Well, that's a contraction. Your body's that sensitive to that point. So just keep the water intracellular and not extracellular, because then you're gone. You put yourself out of first place
Yeah.
once you spill over, and you can't correct that while you're on stage.
I'm sure that's what the coaches
Yes.
keep all that in mind. I just want to have a reference
Yeah.
point.
But that's for you. Don't stress mentally. You don't want to stress. That's going to release the cortisol, which is going to give you subcutaneous water.
Yeah.
So you want to keep the water in the cells.
Okay.
And you're not gonna, the thing is, you're not gonna see your physique like somebody else, like external, gonna see it. So just trust in your coach, and whatever he sees, just like, okay, cool. But don't feel like, I'm not pumped up. You might be pumped up according to your
For
coach,
sure.
but you might not feel it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You might not. So just whatever feedback you're getting from your coach, just trust it and just go with that. You know what I mean? Don't put too much stress on yourself. You don't want to add that extra stress.
Right.
This is already stressful. And if you're worried about, you're gonna flatten, it's gonna flatten out like crazy. Your adrenaline is gonna dump, and you're just gonna be like,
Yeah.
So trust in your coach, believe what he's saying, and once you put that trust factor, it's gonna give you confidence.
Yeah.
And that confidence, you just take it on stage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you can know if you're flat though, like if you're,
Yeah, you
squeezing,
know.
if you're squeezing your bicep and you can't hold the contraction, like you don't feel that tightness, then you're flat. You need some sodium, you're too depleted, and that's, something that you want to address. But, like when you get backstage, I don't know what these guys will say to it, but I'm sure they agree to some level. I mean, you want to be prepared for that. You want to have a fast digesting carb, you want to have some sodium back there, whether it's salt packets, whether it's some type of sour patch or something like that, because your body is temperamental at that point, and you want to be able to counteract some of those things. Hopefully you don't need to use any of that. You bring some of that stuff backstage, the goal's not to open up any of that. When you see dudes backstage fucking loading up rice cakes and everything else and this and that,
Your stomach is like this.
Yeah.
back?
yeah, that's not good. That's not what you're looking for. It's the same thing, when you're getting to your peak week, it should be as controlled as possible. There shouldn't be all these variables. I mean, I think at some point it's like, oh, it's peak week and all this cool shit starts happening. Not really. I mean, your food should stay the same, it's going to adjust, but there shouldn't be new foods, there shouldn't be all this new stuff going on. I mean, it should be pretty streamlined, and you're just changing the quantities of the timings in which you're doing certain things to help minimize the water a little bit, increase the glycogen a little bit, and that's really it. It's business as usual, not a whole, simple, stupid.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Because you add too many variables, and you don't know what the hell went right and what the hell went wrong. Oh, fuck, I was with the half a Snickers bar I ate before I went on stage.
Was
or
it
the-
that, was it this? No.
Yeah.
At least, like I said, create a blueprint, and then just keep track of whatever you're doing, and that way you know what didn't work, and you know what did work, and you just go from there. Yeah.
Let's talk about weigh-in day. That's the worst. Those last 2-3 days before weigh-in, I am so stupid. I have nothing. My wife will drive the car, we'll drive to the show, and I have nothing. She's almost guiding me by, come on, we're going here, we're going there.
Why is that? What's happening?
Probably because I got nothing. I have no carbs in me, I don't have any water in me.
Are you that close to not making weight? Is that the issue, that you're cutting it that
Yeah,
close?
yeah.
I mean, that's,
I'm doing lightweight.
yeah.
Right now, I'm hitting at 170, 175, but I gotta be over 154 for lightweight,
Yeah.
and I make it, but it's not easy.
Do you think that going through that process is helping your physique or hurting your physique? There's always a fine line, especially in those weight classes and being a master's athlete. Sometimes you do so much to make a weight class that it ends up being more detrimental. And by the time that you weigh in and try to recover from that, your body's like, yeah, screw this, this isn't any good.
But you really don't have enough time.
My coach had me, I gotta get down because you wanna be the biggest
Do you?
in your weight class. All right, so if I'm going, if I
Just to
was.
stop you, what did I say on the onset of this? It's no longer the biggest.
I'm never the
No,
biggest.
no, I'm saying
that right now.
if I was a lightweight, I would be bigger at 153 than I would be at 145. Okay, so at the top of my class, at the lowest weight class I could be at the top of my class. So what he had me do is, he had me next to nothing, all right, to get weight. And then afterwards, it was a cheeseburger, French fries, it was eating some food, and then there was adding some water in, but sensibly, right? And then get up early because the show, the bodybuilding ones would be on early, you know, like 9 o'clock-ish or so, and then you get up at 4 o'clock, and then you would start getting food in you know, but not a whole lot.
How far are you out by the time for you to weigh in? What's your weight before that weigh-in? Like how much weight do you cut in, say, a week of? Like say, you're a 5, the show's on Saturday, it's Monday.
Maybe 4
What's your weight
pounds,
class?
maybe 4 pounds.
Okay.
That's it, I'm that close, you know?
Okay.
I might be 156, and I need to be 154, and then, like, the drive from Georgia to Pennsylvania, you know, I won't eat, I won't drink anything, you know, for that weigh-in.
Can you get there faster, like a fly?
You gotta remember too, I mean, you travel.
That's an 11-hour drive, that's a 12-hour drive.
I know it is, yeah.
I wouldn't
suggest
just
walk
drive
like
it,
that.
I would fly.
I think what we're trying to say is you need to measure the negative impact of what you're doing to make that weight.
Yeah.
And number one, is there a better way to do it? And number two, I mean, you know, competitively speaking, like when you look at your contest prep and the progression of that, you know, you're taking pictures every week and you know where your weight's at every week. When do you look your absolute best? Is it at 154 pounds or 152 pounds, or is it at 159 pounds or 160 pounds? Even though you might be giving up 5 pounds, 8 pounds, but if you look your best at that weight.
That's the thing, if I get the weight, then just overnight, you can pack on 3 or 4 or 5 pounds easy.
Doesn't mean it's gonna look good.
Well,
If you're averaging, say you're averaging on a healthy diet, you might average what, 2.5 pounds a week, or you know what I'm saying, like getting ready for a competition, you might be losing. So you might need to figure out what weeks you need to start. And that way, that's why I'll ask, like, what's your weight by that week? You should already know, like, okay, I'm averaging 1.5 pounds, maybe 2 pounds a week, I'm losing weight. Okay, my show is this. By that time, I'm gonna be 154. That way you're not necessarily like, based on your diet, of course, you know, so just watch your diet and see what you're averaging on your weight loss per week, and that way you're gonna know, okay, this is where I'm gonna be at on this week. It's gonna help out when it comes to like, for a show. I know what I'm gonna weigh on stage based on just my diet alone. From when I start, I'm like, okay, I'm this much, this is how much I weigh. I'm gonna average maybe 2 pounds a week, maybe 1.5, 2 pounds. I already know I'm gonna be on stage 180, 185. You know, so just do it like that. Do it in a healthier way. 4 pounds from competition by the week, that's pretty good. That's not too bad. I thought you were gonna be like, oh, 10, 15 pounds.
no,
and then you're coming
That's
down.
not the way it was. It was like 4 pounds. You know,
Okay.
like 156.
This is bodybuilding, bro, and you're gonna be tired and depleted. You know, this is not, it's
But I don't like the idea that you're gonna drive.
that you're gonna
10,
drive
12 hours.
with that.
You shoot
No, I think you drive.
No, it's too long.
And shoot gum and spit.
Yeah, no, shorten your travel time as best you can. If you can fly, I would fly. And that way that shortens your travel time that much more. You're there earlier and you can get on the scale a little bit faster. That way you're not suffering 11 hours or 12 hours of driving.
And if I'm correct,
That's a
then
long
you can
time.
weigh in,
Yeah.
you know, almost at any time there for Masters
See
National.
that, you know what? My coach just told me that. He was just telling me to take this strip rope a day early. You can weigh in a day early.
Okay.
At some point, you know, you can weigh in earlier, so then that'll give you that time to recuperate too.
Yeah, you don't want to stretch your physique that close to a show. It's just not going to give you enough time to recover. Shorten your travel time as much as possible.
You
And
get
that way
there 2
you're
days before, cut your water out the night before,
Yeah.
wake up depleted, weigh in, and then.
Weigh in and then get it. Yeah. Don't. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I did for Nashville's 22, is I got there at 170, midway through the day, one day before weigh-ins, we pulled water back from 5 liters to 3. Then I woke up, didn't have any until 2 p.m., I think is the weigh-ins for Nationals.
Yeah.
And then by 2 p.m. I was right at it. I didn't have to really do much else. I didn't even touch a diuretic or any of that. It was literally just 5 pounds of natural diuresis, made weight, and I was on stage pre-doing like 175.
Yeah. When I turned pro by 2013, I turned pro as a lightweight, 154 and a half or whatever. So I was coming out from like 170. The same thing.
See, I'm on 170 right now.
Yeah,
I was 175 too.
Yeah, I was I felt like crap. And they said weigh-ins was like a couple hours. I was like, oh man, I need to weigh in right now. Like, you know, so just time it better. It's timing.
Yeah.
Time.
And the last show I went to North Carolina in November, 2 weeks out, it was at 160.
Okay.
Man, I gotta get going. And my body stayed there at 160, so.
Because you're holding on to muscles.
Huh?
You
Probably
know,
cortisol too.
So
Yeah.
I thought what was happening was I was too less calories, you know, so I added 25 grams of rice to 3 of my meals, and I lost 4 pounds that next quarter. It was amazing, you know, it was just, wow,
Yeah,
it's
so
something else.
Cortisol and prep's one of the biggest things that you have to manage, especially from a coaching perspective. It's like that load on your body, the last 4 weeks, you got to know how to push and pull, really.
Yeah, right? It was a great experience, though. I loved it. I love this. This is the best thing.
Well, listen, man, I miss it. It's a good time, that's for sure.
I love it, then I hate it. It's a love-hate relationship.
No doubt about that.
I like, oh man, last week of prep is like, whew, you know,
I know it is.
but it's I love this sport.
I look the best. I mean, I look the absolute best. My vascular, I am so vascular when it got, everybody at the gym's jealous. They, man, I wish I could look like that. How do you do that? I don't know. It's I don't know.
Or you end up doing cardio so much and you're like, all this for 3 minutes on stage.
Right.
If
You know,
that,
16 weeks to 3 minutes on stage.
That's a good point. Have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun. Like,
Absolutely.
you want to go through all of this prep, all this diet, spend all this money and travel and all this. Have fun. Go to the places that you want to go to and experience the city, experience the time, experience, you know, have fun with this sport because it is stressful. You put your body through a lot. And if you're going up there and you didn't even place like you want to place, you're going to be even more upset. So have fun with this, man. Have fun. Enjoy how you look. Enjoy enjoy your transition, and just have fun with it, man. Don't even think too much of it. Yeah, your attitude and how your perspective is everything. Change your perspective of what you're trying to do, and the results is just going to come. The trophy, the win, that's just an icing on the cake. I already look good. Nobody can tell me shit. You know what I mean? Like, the judges, okay, cool. I feel like I still look good. You know. So just enjoy the process and just have fun. That's just a icing on the cake, man. When you get the trophy, you get the medal, and it's like, yes, this is what I've been working for. This is it's a it's a reward for your hard work, but make sure you reward yourself too. So.
You know, I'll tell you this real every time I did a show, my wife and I went on vacation.
Okay.
So we went on somewhere to the beach or something.
Oh, you're trying to show
You're
yourself.
doing it right after the show. Out there.
You're trying to show
People look at us.
Yeah.
You were Jack. That's awesome, you know?
That's a good idea.
Oh, man, this year
I
I
would take that.
well, my wife and I are planning to go to Puerto Rico, like 2 weeks after the show.
Nice.
From there, yeah, so we're gonna have a good time.
Yeah, the judges know if you're not having fun. I mean, you know, all the expediters and these guys that run, you know, events, you know, over and over and over again, they're gonna tell you, have fun.
I'm happy.
You know, don't take it too seriously, enjoy yourself. When you get up on stage, you know, just be who you are, don't stress, and just do what you can there that you're already prepped to do.
And everybody came to see you.
That's
Having
right.
fun. Everybody came to see me.
Yes.
And I'm giving them a show. I'm having fun.
Yep,
Like
exactly.
Chris Bumstead should be everybody's idol when it comes to what you do behind the scenes on your mind to have that perception outlook.
Perception is everything, man. How you perceive yourself, how you perceive the competition is everything. You just gotta have a positive perception of what you're doing, and the results is just icing. Results are just a reward for all of that. You know? Yeah.
visualize yourself succeeding on stage.
Yep. Visualization. I sit backstage before I get on stage, and I'm already going through my whole routine over and over and over again on stage before I even get on there. So when I'm on stage, it just seems like I just did this like 5 minutes ago. You know?
It becomes so natural.
Yeah, it becomes so natural.
There's no
Yeah.
anxiety,
No.
no stress to
No.
it. And at the same time, I mean, your attitude is, your altitude has always been to help, but you also got to be objective. I mean, understand the position you're in, understand the physique that you're bringing. You see somebody backstage who looks like him, understand you ain't going to beat him. But this is how it goes, and that's okay. Like, that's okay. But enjoy what you're bringing and have a good time doing it. And hey, you take second, you take third, you don't win that class, dude, that's incredible. So So the same thing, you know, it's my last show, I lost by 1 point twice, and I was like, oh man, I can't believe you're not losing it, blah, 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 like, hey man, it just took a second, and one of the biggest shows in the world, like, my kids are here, I'm good, like, I have this, that, and the other thing, like, life is good. Like, I'm not gonna go and be upset about this for a fucking second and ruin my own weekend. That's just, I always talk to my kids about, be productive. It's an unproductive mindset. So to sit there and, you know, piss and moan and have a bad attitude, like, hey, ruin your weekend, go ahead, man, but life is good, regardless of how you place on this thing. Do you guys have any other questions about posing specifically?
Oh,
I will
No,
say,
I had no.
know your choreography. Like, you know, for your presentations, for your 30 seconds that you get or whatever, at the night shows, practice that also. You know your mandatories, of course, as they've talked about. But, you know, you'll have a presentation show with music. Have your music with you, or at least know what selection. Practice to that music before you